All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, feel free to get up and grab some food or drink if need be. We have the printouts of the PowerPoint should be on each table, so if anybody needs a copy of that, we can run those around. Welcome to meeting number 6. So we're moving along, and we're happy to have our subject matter experts for aquatics here tonight. So thank you so much for joining us, and excited to be able to take our next step. So we're kind of in the third part of our four projects. And I think the process has gone well, allowed us to have some really good, robust conversations about all kinds of options. Again, we're just exploring what do we want, right? You know, knowing that these facilities are things that are going to be with us for 50 to 100 years. Let's make sure that we're doing that right. We're not shortchanging ourselves. And certainly in the first two groups, we didn't shortchange ourselves in those plans. So that's a good thing. That's part of what this process is. So we're looking forward to having everybody here again tonight. So we'll start by just having a little bit of a recap for our committee members, just around some feedback that we had from all the sessions up to this point. I think we had some good consensus last time that we had met, but just to make sure that everybody's in that space. And then we'll spend most of our time just introducing our aquatic center. So some of that's going to be becoming familiar with our current spaces and what we currently have. And that's, again, where our subject matter experts can provide some kind of real practical feedback into what it's like to live in those spaces on a daily basis. And then talk about, again, defining needs and what are some of our potential options, looking at what other places are doing to address aquatic needs, both in communities and in school settings. So that's the plan that we have for tonight. You want to go to the next Slide? We'll do a little bit of preliminary site exploration and then a close. Again, we'll be out of here by 6 o'clock tonight, if not earlier. So this will be the first of 2 meetings for aquatics, and we'll be able to follow up with the conversation at our next meeting. And for committee members, thank you for your commitment to back-to-back weeks. We know this is kind of the hiccup in our schedule, so thank you for taking the time to come out tonight. So with that, I'll kick it over to Clint.
Thank you, Brian. Why don't we just quick have our introduction, if our subject matter experts just want to state your name and maybe which facility or building you like to associate yourself with.
All right, I'm Kelvin. I'm the head boys and girls swim coach at Oshkosh West.
I'm Ian Sewell. I'm the head boys swim coach and the assistant girls swim coach at North.
Carrie Boris, retired swim coach from Oshkosh West.
Veronica Robinson, program supervisor with the recreation department.
Cable Helmbrecht, director of recreation for the rec department.
Okay, awesome.
Well, as Brian said, again, and as we've done all along, we've been trying to track the feedback as we've gone through. Again, the goal is, to, again, continue to have these to bounce back as we need to. But again, I think we had really good feedback at the end of the last meeting, kind of in terms of where we landed with the auditorium. So I guess just maybe real quickly, I'll kind of just put you guys on the spot a little bit. Just if there's maybe 1 or 2 topics on top of mind, it can be for any of the various, I guess, two different building types that we've talked about. Again, I think what we'll do a little bit is utilize our next meeting again to kind of wrap up the pool and then tackle any other additional items. So if there are maybe 1 or 2 top of mind items that you would specifically like us to return to with regard to the other 2 project types last time, we'll make note of that and make sure we do come back to that. So I guess we'll start here. Okay. Okay. Okay, all right. All right, so aquatic center. So I'm gonna put our subject matter experts on notice, and I'm sure you guys could go on for a long time on each of your facilities. But again, maybe just a brief description kind of some of the I guess, positives and negatives of each of the buildings. Starting with west, again, just a couple of our notes, seating capacity about 150, so that's pretty low. 6 lanes of swimming, which is generally 8 is what at least 8 is what a lot of districts or newer pools are being built to. Limited storage, and then again, originally built in 1959, right around there. So if anybody wanna, again, kind of brief thoughts, additional comments on west.
I think this was addressed at that first meeting too, but I think like some of the bigger issues, when we host bigger meets, the pool deck floods both above on deck and also into the chemical room underneath the pool, which is problematic. The other big thing, especially the last couple of years, has been the air quality in there. The way that it was built, the air doesn't circulate, so it's essentially just like stale hot air that sits in there and then gets re-pumped in there. So it gets very hot in there very quickly, very humid, which is standard for a pool, but it's sort of not the standard. It's a little more severe than that. So those are the two like biggest things we've noticed at just every meet and practices.
And also with the ventilation in the pool, there's times where you have, with the condensation on the outside wall, you've got these big drips that are coming down the walls. I don't know what it is, what material, what liquid material it is coming down, but there's big drips that come down the side with the condensation that builds up on that outside wall. Storage is really tough over at West. We don't have, everything is on the deck because there's really no room in the storage rooms to put the stuff. You've got 2 big lane marker reels. By the time you put all your equipment out there, it gets in the way and it becomes almost a hazard as far as for your life-saving equipment that needs to be out and about because there's so much stuff on the deck. So that's also a big one.
Yeah, additionally with that, like anything that you store in the pool area has a life of like less than 2 years until you have to replace it because it corrodes so easily. So like a lot of our technology things to run the meet are stored right on deck or close to it in the storage closet, and that's just not a great environment. And it's hard to see in the photos, but the diving well is attached to the 6 lanes, so we can never have our divers really practice with us because they practice at North and share a coach, but if they were to practice at West, that would take up a minimum of 2 lanes, which then puts all the swimmers into 4 lanes. So if you have a 50-person team, you can't have them swim in 4 lanes. It's just not safe. And then the divers are also limited to that 2-lane space, which is also not safe in case they go to the side or something like that. So that's been, I mean, they're always at North now, but that's kind of sad for our dive program too. We never really see that. So that space just for practices is pretty limited.
Well, not having divers there too, it's not even really a home facility. They don't ever dive there except for their home meets.
I'll comment on the community aspect, using it for the rec department. I would say that the locker rooms are definitely inadequate. They're inadequate for the high school swimmers. They're inadequate for our community as far as ease of entrance and exit, not enough toilets, not enough lockers, just the overall, it's small on both sides. Yep, obviously a family changing room or something along those lines should definitely be considered in the new plan. Also with just the overall, we talked about the deck, but obviously seating is at minimum. If you were to just have a regular home high school meet, you're still having people standing in the doorway, standing in the hallway, trying to find a place to be because they're only allowed to be on the side where the bleachers are, and there's nowhere else for them to go because the rest of the perimeter is taken up by meat workers, the swimmers, etc. So overall capacity in that pool area is just not conducive to any of that type of programming. For us with swim lessons in particular, it is a traditional old style pool. So we're dealing with below average water temps, I guess is what I would say, because those water temps are set for the high school students primarily, as it should be, but as a, community recreation department, it does make it difficult to have, swim lessons in there, and we do lose people because of that. And a lot of these comments that I'm making, I will just say ditto for North as well. As far as water temperature, deck space is great for us at North, but definitely things like water temperature, locker rooms for sure, not great. So we have some of the same issues at both pools from the community side.
Yeah, so I guess that is a good transition then, yeah, so what is interesting at North is they do have a separate diving well, so you can see it in the picture here, so that did result in a little bit more deck space as a result. And there's a cruder picture here, that's the diving area back there. So again, traditionally 6 lanes, but my understanding is that there isn't any competition swimming that's done at this facility. So again, I'll turn it over to the group if you guys want to talk about this one. And I guess the other piece too, we did this, I guess we tried to offer it last time. I'm not sure if anyone took us up on tours, but I would assume we could tour this tonight if toward the end, if anyone's interested. So
We've got life jackets if needed, so you don't have to swim.
Thanks.
So as far as North's facility goes, it's like you said, it's really nice having a separate diving well, whether it's the same pool or a separate pool. I've swam in pools myself that have had separate diving wells as a separate pool, and it's nice to just have it as one depth. You don't have to worry about the incline on the bottom of the pool if it comes to draining the pool, cleaning it, repairs. You don't have to drain both pools. You can drain one. They can be on 2 different systems and such, but there's positives and negatives to both if you take the lane lines out and such. But deck space is fantastic. I really enjoy the amount of space that we have as long as the bleachers are up or out of the way. We can use it for dry land activities, and PE right now has a lot of mats and floats and stuff kind of scattered throughout it that they can let it dry. So that's kind of a nice positive. As far as the actual facility goes right now, we can't use it for competition due to depth regulations on the swimming side of things. All of the blocks were removed a number of years ago because it's just not deep enough when the standard changed. Although we have, if you can kind of see where the diver on the wall, painted on the wall next to the Spartan head on the left, there's 2 diving blocks that were installed so that we can practice diving there, but we don't even use it for competition. So practicing diving is great and needs to happen, but so that would be awesome. Depth, as far as the same depth all the way across, is slightly different in the middle. It's nice for different water aerobic activities, again, going back to recreation stuff. But I use water aerobics in my own training sessions as a different way to look at muscle groups and things like that. So having that shallow end is kind of nice, and then obviously for recreation usage, it's good to have.
Yeah, for swim lessons, it's great. As far as the depth of the water, it's conducive for that. Again, water temperature tends to be an issue. Same with water aerobics. The setup, as far as the pool itself, is great. Water temperature, a little problematic. With the older adults, there is no 0 depth entry. We have accommodated that with our accessible stairs, and of course there's a chairlift there, but those amenities certainly need an upgrade for sure. Again, the locker rooms are very small, so at North here, they have the FIAD locker rooms, and then they have, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, the community locker rooms. So the locker rooms that we use, you have to walk through the showers, which a lot of parents, when they're dressed in clothes, do not like if people are in the shower. So again, no rooms to move around. I do want to add one thing that I didn't mention before with West. If we're moving towards an all-purpose type of facility, we at the Recreation Department are trying to expand our aquatics programming in the community to go beyond swim lessons, beyond water aerobics, beyond swim teams. So with that, I'm talking possibly kayaking classes. We've had some Discover Scuba classes, so deep water, definitely we need that. So I mention that because those pieces of equipment are obviously large. That's not to say that that equipment's gonna be stored in the facility, but in terms of being able to bring in large amounts of equipment or larger equipment with ease into the pool area is going to be necessary as far as access.
One other thing too, oops, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thinking of how North can't host their meets, neither pool can host a championship meet, so like a conference or a sectional meet, due to the 6-lane restriction. So not, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it also means that that prevents us from hosting it ever and, you know, possibly making some money, but also it leaves the championship and sectional meet to pretty much like 3 schools in our area. So we just rotate through those 3 schools.
What are those 3 schools?
Appleton North, Bondi, and
Yeah.
East.
And that obviously, you know, ties into economic, you know, development of Oshkosh, because then we don't have, you know, all those families coming here for those events.
I will say storage is not too terrible as far as off the pool deck. We have definitely more storage space than West does.
It's at least double.
It's at least double. We don't fit all the lane line reels in there, but it's definitely more room in there. So that's a positive, but we'd love to have a little bit more space. You can get rid of too much space.
If I can mention the gutter systems between North and West, even though West is the older pool, that is a lot more accommodating for all, for anyone to get up and out of the pool. North gutter system, with the way it was, I don't remember what you would call it, but with the gutter system, if you are teaching swimming lessons to a young child, you set them on the one portion of it, and then you have to lift them up onto the deck, and it's really difficult for anyone to get kids in and out of the pool. And even for the swimmers, having to get up and out or do any kind of dry land, you know, gutter sit-ups, anything, you can't do that at North with their gutter system.
It's like a metal trough, is
Yep.
basically
Yes,
what it
exactly.
is. So you've got the pool deck, it comes down into this trough, and then you've got, you know, a skinnier, you know, metal piece that comes up. So it is slippery, it's not as conducive to the activities Carrie was talking about, whereas West, it's a nice kind of step.
It's not up to code anymore. Water can go into the gutter, and then it's supposed to be carried and be filtered. At North, it can go into the gutter and come back right out into the pool.
I want to throw one more thing out there about diving too, is our diving board cracked a year or 2 years ago, and we had a real difficult time trying to find a new diving board because it's just a concrete block. It's not an actual stand. It was created into the pool and the facility was made. So again, like Craig, yeah, so finding something is not great.
All right.
So what's the problem? I feel like we sound like we're like Neanderthals. We're like at the rocks.
It's a home pool advantage. The
So
teams aren't used to this.
When we met with the ADs, they did mention that Oshkosh 20th Street Avenue is where where I think North does your guys' competition. So just pointing this out that this is an 8-lane venue, decent seating capacity at 350. This does have kind of a splash pad, water slide type area to it as well. So pretty cool amenity. I don't know if you want to speak a little more to this facility and how you guys use it.
I'm not gonna speak too much on it, but the thing that kind of bothers me the most about this facility is that all the equipment that we use is Oshi's stuff. It's not ours.
Is that the club?
It's the club team, yes, thank you. So anything that breaks, anything that needs to be purchased, I can't go through the school district. I can't say, hey, I need the school district to come fix this, I need this new. I have to go through the YMCA and the Oshi, and sometimes they don't get replaced, and so we're just kind of out. So if something's not working, I can't call any of the people that know how to set it up, because I don't know any of them, you know. I know the people here at North, and some of the people at West, and I don't know a ton of the people at the Y. So, you know, if the touchpad doesn't work, some of the system, which is kind of homemade, doesn't work, again, it's not our system, it's something I'm using that I was taught to use, and if it doesn't work, I can't fix it, so.
It takes about an hour setup and about 45 minutes to take down every meet.
Yep.
And Ian had to learn it, and I don't know how he remembered it all. But on the other hand, the YMCA does not charge us a dime, and they have it for 20 years. We'll host a single meet out there. So they've been very, very accommodating, and when we can't host at the Y, then we go to West. So our needs have been met, just not at our pool for 20 years.
Isn't that the best kind of pool? Somebody else.
That's right.
Somebody
else's problem.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah.
I'm kind of curious, because I do know a little bit more of the 20th pool, also the one on campus, Albe. How do those facilities compare? Like, would you say that those facilities are closer to what you would envision as being ideal for ours?
I love Albe Hall. I know a lot of people that swim there don't like it. I swam there for 4 years. I loved it. It's better than my high school pool. It's very narrow deck space. Their whole ground situation is like Fond du Lac's, except different in a way, but it's very slippery. Their gutter system's kind of funky, but also kind of like West's where it's nice, so it's very funky. I'd be happy to get you in there, just to anybody who wants to take a look. I know the coach very well, he's a good friend of mine, so if anybody wants to go look at that, you can go check it out. There's parts of it I like, parts of it I don't.
So, if I can speak on the 20th as well, it's nice to have the 8-lane pool. You definitely have 8+ at this point right now to survive in the swimming world. The only thing I do not like as far as for a meet in itself is the acoustics. It's really difficult to hear the announcer. It's nice for the splash pad and everything else that you have within the community, but with that activity, if it's going on, you have a really hard time. It doesn't seem real conducive for a high school swimming. You kind of lose everybody. I know when we would, like I said, it's been great to have that facility, to be able to go there, but I felt like I was losing my team members when we went to the Y, because I couldn't keep them all under my wrap. I didn't know where they were. You know, and just like I said, I don't know, the acoustics just weren't the best as far as for high school meet. And I don't know because it's that eerie or whatever, but just something with the acoustics was really tough.
I would also just add, as you were asking about a comparison, keep in mind that those two pools, you know, we're comparing old facilities to old facilities there. So my opinion would be to not necessarily look at other facilities in Oshkosh, because everything we have in Oshkosh, I mean, if you look here, I didn't even realize it myself, the 20th Ave pool is now 20 years old, 20 plus, 21. And so I think there are some other facilities in here that may be better options to look at as far as what's new out there now. Because so many things have changed in mechanics and construction with pools now, that this does make that comparison outdated, and for sure with UWO.
Oh, yeah.
That's a wonderful segue then.
Well, that's twice. Do I get a prize?
You do. Well, 3. You gotta do 3. So our company, Bray Architects, has been fortunate to do a number of recent pools. Ashwaubenon was built in, gosh, so yeah, you say already, but yeah, 2015. It feels like we just did this one. A pretty nice pool in that they did a 25-meter competition, 8-lane competition. This does have the diving into that same pool. So to the point earlier of losing some lanes during practice, they would have that same situation here. They do have a separate warm water, so this is kind of the floor plan here. There's the competition pool, and then a segregated separate warm water. One of the nice things that they had was, and sort of similar to you guys, was their village and school district kind of did this project in partnership. So this is very much a school district, rec department, village conjoined type project. So a lot of, some considerations given for seniors, as we did have a number of individual changing rooms off the warm water pool. They did separate locker rooms for public versus the PE or team locker rooms. So there's kind of 4 big locker rooms, and then again, like I said, 3 individual little changing areas. The spectator seating for this is up on a mezzanine level, so that's going to be, I think, a theme you're going to see as we look through all of these. That's kind of seen as one of the better methods to get good viewing down.
and also alleviate some of the challenges we have because bleacher companies do not want their bleachers on the deck of a pool due to the corrosive nature of the environment. So again, this again shows the competition area. This is that warm water therapy area. So there are a couple of swim lanes within here, but then again, we tried to make this really flexible in terms of water aerobics and that type of thing. So they keep this pool at a warmer temperature, I think 88, versus the competition pool, I think at 82 or something like that. So I thought I had put this on there. The pool depth of this one is 12'6" at the diving area.
You can also notice though that the diving boards are similar to West's, where they do have to move the competition pool to dive it. It's up there.
Beloit Memorial, so we did this one a few years before that one. So this is just a competition pool. Again, this also has the diving integrated in, so to your point, this is another instance where they do lose this. This one, we did do the seating down on the deck level, but there is some seating up above on a mezzanine level as well. Like it says here, we have seating for about 750 at this pool. And again, the depth at about 12'6". Again, I don't know that detail's that important at this point in time, because I'm sure by the time we build this, the code will be something different by then anyway. So, a few more pictures of Beloit. We did include Fond du Lac, and just more from the specific perspective that when we did do the Ashwaubenon project, this is probably the one they kind of looked to in terms of informing us to create that warm water area. They do have a separate diving well as well. So I guess kind of the best of both worlds in terms of having that area within the facility. Again, this was built in '91, but again, I think they did this one very well, so some positive things to take from this particular facility in terms of, again, the format and looking at it.
Is it attached to the old high school or is it?
It is, yeah, this would have been at Goodrich. So when they built the new high school, they left the pool here, they did not put a pool at the new high school. And then we were just talking, Neenah, so our company's in the process, and that's under construction now. They're building a new high school, so Neenah did not build a pool at the new high school. It stayed on their current facility. We're also working on Sun Prairie High School, which will open this fall. They are building a pool as part of their facility, so we didn't have final pictures, but it's sort of similar to some of the ones we've shown here with the diving that we've included within it. But we'll see some other examples where that doesn't happen. Since you guys do swim at this one anymore, again, understanding this is an older pool, but just any additional comments or feedback on this one?
I think there are a lot of positives with the Fond du Lac pool. The seating is pretty nice. Separate locker rooms for community and sports teams. There's like an actual wall between the competition pool and the warm water pool, so it's like locked and blocked off, so the kids aren't like going in there or anything during meets, which is kind of nice. But I think there's some good positives there.
And that
There's a lot of negatives with their floors. I've had a lot of athletes slip and fall. I don't know why they built wall tiles on the floor, if that's the way it is or not, but lots of slipping, so fun. I don't know why it's a big problem, but it is.
I would just say too, from, again, multi-use, as Kelly mentioned, having that blocked off or with glass doors or glass windows or something where we could come in and still have swim lessons or water aerobics while they're having a swim meet. We don't have to cancel and jockey around and move to a different facility. We haven't had to do that too much anymore, given North's situation and us programming around what they have going on. But having those separate, the separate layout would be a nice feature to have.
Yeah, and Ashwaubenon was like that too. They had Ashwaubenon did have a wall between there, so yeah, I mean that definitely makes a lot of sense. Sorry, go ahead.
It seems like we want to keep the community separate from students, right? I mean, especially in swimsuits. Seems like that makes sense.
Sometimes not in swimsuits, but yeah.
Did either Fond du Lac or Ashwaubenon or the other one have any community aquatic thing there?
Yes, Ashwaubenon, again, it was a
Okay.
partnership between their village rec department and their school, so.
I think Fond du Lac also runs their rec department out of this facility.
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
so.
I just want to clarify your comment if I could. It's not so much that we want to make sure we're segregated, we just don't want to be in each other's way in order to be able to be in the facility at the same time. So if we do have, you know, a warm water pool where noise and things, you know, you don't have people running between the two areas, it just makes it a little bit smoother to be able to coexist versus having to, you know, wait your turn to be able to utilize the facility.
Well, it just makes sense too, the two pools do two very different things.
Correct.
They function very differently from one another if that's what we do in this particular case. So it really does there's way more advantages to them being closed off than open. And I think at Ashwaubenon, we actually talked about, you know, some type of a movable wall or sections of it that open, but that, you know, ultimately they just said, we're gonna have it closed more often than not, and the cost to make it flexible, just, they didn't see the value in it, so.
I would also add too, as we're looking at some of these pictures, we were just talking here, when you're looking at the seating capacity and you're looking at the pictures, the one comment we kind of had here was, you know, wow, Beloit seats 750, which is so much more than Ashwaubenon, but Ashwaubenon looks so much bigger. Lighting is huge. So going along with the acoustics, you know, you want to have adequate lighting so you don't feel like you are in a dungeon. You want, I mean, West has absolutely no vision to the outside whatsoever, so the only way you know what's going on is if alarms are going off or, you know, the rain and the wind is so heavy you can actually hear it. North is a little bit, you know, lighter and brighter, but we definitely need to make sure we take those things into consideration as well.
Howard Swamico, so this is not a braid project, so again, did my best to try to find some of the information. I was not able to find their seating capacity, but judging by the number of kind of levels here, I'd probably say this is somewhere between 200 and 300, probably 300 on the very generous side. So again, nice facility built in 2015. Eight-lane competition with the diving as well. And again, their diving is part of the swim lane area. So again, they lose lanes when they're practicing to the point earlier. Verona High School, so this was built in 2020 as part of their new high school project. 800 seat capacity, 8-lane with a separate diving well in their particular case. You can just see it off the screen here. So a very nice looking facility. Again, we did not do this one. It's really hard to tell, and I couldn't find literature or a floor plan, but it almost looks like there's another pool back here, but I couldn't tell if that's just a different space and it's just a reflection of the pool. It was a little deceiving, but.
Are you guys familiar by chance with that facility?
No, that looks awesome.
So again, this is a 25-yard pool. But then we move into a little bit different version of things. So to the best of my knowledge, there's either 2 or 3 50-meter or Olympic sized pools in the state. So one of them, coincidentally, is really close to my house, and I've yet to be there, but it's the Walter Schroeder Aquatic Center. I think they also call it the Rec Plex down in Brown Deer, so just north of Milwaukee. Again, this is a 50-meter pool. You can kind of tell within each of these pictures, but there's this little white, they call it a bulkhead, that in every single picture it's almost in a different spot, so that's movable to sort of adjust whether you are doing a 25-yard or 25-meter race or the full 50 meters. They can kind of segregate it off. This also has, again, the fancy diving, the 10-meter, I'll call platform diving on the far end. So they are able to kind of segregate the diving from the non-diving areas of the facility for practice or various events. Again, apologize, I could not find spectator seating information, but again, judging by kind of the number of bleachers here, I'm guessing they're easily probably 500 or 600 spectators.
Their seating is not.
It's not great?
There's a lot of it because it does wrap around 2 full sides of the pool, but there's maybe 5 rows.
And they've got a stairwell that goes up on top for bleachers up on top for part of the pool, and then there are bleachers on the deck that roll out onto the deck.
Okay.
I did find some information about Verona. It looks like they have 3 pools. They have the competition pool, the warm water pool, and the natatorium. And they're 3 separate schedules, so I assume they're 3 separate pools.
Yeah, that's in Brown Deer.
And this is really kind of more of a separate entity. This is not part of like the Brown Deer School District. This is just really a separate building in and of itself.
I know the colleges do their Wisconsin Showcase. All Wisconsin college teams swim there at the beginning of their season, and the conference meets there, so it hosts all of the teams and a lot of their spectators just fine. As far as the seating goes, I know that it's very hot there because there's way up high in the ceiling space. So as far as the competition goes, it's a wonderful pool.
That was the elite pool back when it was built in 1980. I know they ran the NCAA Division I guys championships there when it was first built, but it is being outdated to a certain extent. As you can see the different changes that are being made within some of the other pools. But it is, I mean, having 2 back-to-back 8-lane pools would be fantastic.
Then the other one that's relatively new is the Saturn Family Aquatic Center at UW Madison. So this is, I've told 1,200 seat, 8-lane. Again, they do have the diving platform you can see down on the one end. Again, this is a 50-meter pool with a movable bulkhead type scenario. So beautiful facility. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this actually replaced their previous pool, because I think they had a 50-meter pool that this replaced then. He's shaking his head.
Yes, I believe so, yeah. And just on that last slide, you had mentioned the rec plex, that is actually.
Yeah, that's in Racine, Kenosha.
That's in
yeah.
Pleasant Prairie,
Yeah.
so.
After I said it, I realized I misspoke. But I think that's the third one.
I think there's only 3, yeah.
I didn't include that one because that's too far away. So. Are there any other, I guess, pools or facilities that I know you mentioned Neenah. I don't know if there's anything unique or different that we would want to highlight or show the group maybe next time. Any other pools in this state that you're aware of to consider? Again, to the best of my knowledge, I think this represents a lot of the newer ones, I'll say.
Waukesha South High School, they host the state swim meet now since the new facility at UW Madison, I think, wants to charge quite a bit to host it. So it's been at Waukesha South the last 2 years. Their pool, I don't feel like is anything special, but they're seating on both sides, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's bleacher seating. They have a movable bulkhead as well, and I think their pool's actually set up that it's 25 meters in one direction and 25 yards in the other direction.
Yeah.
So.
And diving is part of it, but the seating aspect there is interesting, I think.
Okay.
So summarizing some of the goals, I guess, that maybe we heard from the initial meeting with you guys, and again, talking about this is again, as we've talked about, this is a shared use facility, district-wide and community-wide, practice and competition venue. I think the goal would be to host, invites and sectionals of some sort or events. Again, access for community use, so we heard that, whether it's separate or, or being able to separate them off. Separate the diving and swim lane areas to allow for simultaneous events, and probably most importantly during practices that you can practice at the same time. We've talked internally, considering other amenities, whether it's splash pad or play areas, warm water therapy, seating for roughly 700 to 800. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that size, but again, just some general kind of goals, I guess, to check off here. What would you think, again, based on some of the others we saw from a capacity perspective, is that 700 to 800 number what you would expect to see, again, to be able to host, whether it's sectionals or?
Yeah, that'd be more than that, but you look at Neenah and hosting it a lot of times, their spectator seating, as long as it's more than theirs, I think we're doing good, so.
I think just speaking from a community use, I was involved with the renovation of Herb Park and Pool when I was with Appleton, and I ran a 50-meter pool, outdoor pool for 18 years, but having just a 50-meter pool and the amount of use that got by lap swimmers and then huge swim meets, there's nothing like that around here. Having that outdoor swimming, if you want to bring people to town, if you had an indoor venue like that in northeast Wisconsin, you could book that thing all the time for swim meets from, get people as far as south as probably Illinois, Indiana, coming up here to swim. That would be a huge draw as far as bringing people to Oshkosh.
And you could have it set up both ways, if you just said, no, you could have a 25-yard and a 50-meter.
Yeah, for sure.
So you could actually achieve both.
There's certain things, especially with the outdoor meets, where, records only count if it's in a 50-meter pool. They don't do the 25 meters or yards, so I know, working with, in the school district at Appleton West, they actually converted theirs to a meter pool, which it was a yard pool. And they switched to have their starting blocks start in the deep end, just because they ran into the same problem at North had, where you couldn't dive into the shallow water. It sort of eliminated 2 or 3 lanes for the starting block, so.
Do we know about, you guys have worked on a couple pools, and we know that there's a community interest in having, especially, winter access. But we're now getting into a couple of these things that would be a potential draw above and beyond, having better quality existing needs met. When you guys have built some, or some of the other ones, minus the Madison one, they, did their goals expand beyond, modernizing existing competitive swim and access to look at something like that? I like that idea. My wife is swimming, she went up to California to swim because she could outside in February. But, that kind of idea appeals to me as something if we were looking at, competing, drawing people in. Did any of these other places, did they set out to do some things beyond, higher quality existing?
Yeah, at Schwabenon specifically, they went from a 5-lane competition pool at their high school to 8-lane competition plus the warm water. Again, they had the pre-existing collaboration between their rec and their school, so having more space just gave them more ability to offer classes and specific classes and so forth. So I would say in their case, they've far, it exceeded what they had previously.
Do we foresee anything with the depth change? For 1 meter that we'd have to, 12 plus, we wouldn't see that we'd have to go deeper than that, maybe?
No,
we're not looking at any 3-meter boards. So it would be 1 meter boards, which we would have in high school, but we wouldn't have to go, that you would foresee that we'd have to go any deeper.
No, the ones where we've done 1 meter, we've done 12.5 feet, which I think the requirement is 11.9 or 12 right now. So we tried to create more of a buffer of when the code will change. So I don't. Again, I can't predict what the code's going to say, but I would think that's going to give you some flexibility that when codes change, you'll have some ability to adapt.
So does that mean there's no call for 3-meter diving?
Well, 3-meter would be in college, 1-meter in high school. But I'm just concerned on the degree of difficulty in diving in high school, that would, if the dives would get more difficult, do we need more depth?
And you actually need more height as well, so
Yeah.
you actually have to have a certain
True,
clearance
yes.
going up as well, so.
Yes. I'm just thinking of.
Gotta go both ways.
I would like to know how the high schools think they will share this facility.
I guess what we're thinking, if this, this facility gets built, we would more than likely turn into a co-op swim team. So we have an Oshkosh girls team and we have an Oshkosh boys team, not a north team and a west team.
Right. So then the community could use the current swim pools, or would they get torn down?
Probably repurposed, just like South Park's pool did.
Okay.
To add to that, then, we would obviously have to have conversation about times of day when the school is so now going beyond swim team, that's at 3:30 in the afternoon. So that 8 to 3 o'clock or 3:30 time frame, when are FIAD classes or other classes using it, then when can we be in there? So hopefully, that will allow us to have some early morning activities, some maybe daytime swim lessons, similar to the Y, not exactly what the Y has, but similar. And I say that just because this would still potentially, is gonna be used by potentially the high school students, depending on curriculum and where it's at, so forth.
The other thing that works is lacrosse, the sport of lacrosse is probably on the docket to be added to the WIA's sporting options in the next 1 to 3 years. Now you look at where they're gonna put those seasons, if you have a boys and a girls lacrosse team and seasons. Right now we have 5 girls sports in the fall: cross-country, golf, tennis, swimming, and volleyball. Lacrosse and soccer are very similar, so you probably wouldn't see the WIA put girls lacrosse in the spring because that's where our girls soccer is. So this is only my personal guess, is they probably put girls lacrosse in the fall. You couldn't have 6 sports, and they've been talking for quite some time to move girls swimming to the winter. So you'd be having a boys and a girls swim season at the same time, more than likely. And that's where really the 50 meter with the bulkhead would be fantastic.
Yeah, you need
For
the double.
you have boys on one side, girls on the other.
You would need the double.
Yeah.
You have to.
That's interesting.
Then when are you thinking this is gonna happen? Or what is the talk, I guess I should say?
1 to 3 years for the WIA to bring
Yep.
lacrosse in,
Okay.
is my guess.
I have a question to go along with what Gordon was getting at, which if the pools that were built that were particularly large and attractive for hosting meets, have there been sort of return on investment studies to see what the economic development impact has been?
You're talking about the 250 meter pools?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is to that question. I don't have it, but we can see if we can find some information. I'm guessing UW-Madison probably doesn't worry about that stuff so much. But, yeah, the Schroeder Center, we might be able to find some information there. I don't know, does anybody know what it costs to rent it for, if you guys have ever been down there?
Never looked into it.
How many students participate in the swim team? Like, how many are we talking about?
It varies for girls we've had as many as 70 and as low as like 40. For boys this year we had 45, and so I feel like 40s for West is pretty normal for boys.
But if you're co-oping, you're adding another, what, 20 plus for each team?
Yeah, North's numbers are about half
Yeah.
of West is typically where we are compared to West.
When you've helped with new facilities in the past, have they seen a bump in numbers?
Would have to check back, I don't know specifically.
Intuitively, I would think so. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's what the math proves out.
I mean, I'm guessing for even for PE and those types of things where they're attached, there's probably more, interest and even community-wide, oh, there's a new pool, let me go check it out. So I would say inherently yes, but I don't know specifically. And then the other question would be over time, does that end up tapering off?
Yeah, Schwab on pool, the warm water therapy, now that's a separate pool?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, do you know the depth of that? I'm just thinking of like our special ed students, like when we go down to Phi Ed, our water temp is, like I said, between 80 and 82. It'd be really nice to have that separate pool because they would be having that opportunity to get in more swimming as another activity during Phi Ed class.
Yeah, I believe we did it such that it's 3'6" kind of at the deepest, and then I believe it goes to like 2 feet at the more shallow side of it. So again, this was very much water aerobics, learn to swim type pool in mind when we did that. The other cool thing about this, again, not to get into the nerdy code stuff, but when we do provide this, we get away from having our competition pool have a 3'6" at the shallow end. We can go deeper, which is better for the kick turns and going off the blocks. So that does a lot of times work to our advantage because the code requirement is that this has to be a learn to swim facility, but we take care of that. We satisfy that with the warm water side of things. So it gives us a little more flexibility in our construction of the competition pool. Obviously not the reason to build it, but it is a nice perk. When we did Beloit, that was actually consideration here because we started down this path, but we were able to file a variance and say that their YMCA pool was their learn to swim pool. This being built on a high school is simply a competition pool, and they had to provide some platforms that would sit in the water during learning to swim type events. So that we did get around it here as a variance, but that is just a little consideration to think about.
Can I just add something about the warm water pool as well? I will tell you that we gain a lot of swim lesson families in the summer because our summer swim lesson program is part of summer school, okay? So we offer that at no charge. We tend to get a lot of typically YMCA families come to us because that fee is cut down. But again, what they like is the fact that when they go to the Y, it's warm water. So then when the school year comes around and we're offering those lessons, we lose those people back to the Y. So if we had that ability to be able to accommodate special education students, the older adult population, the kids of any age, quite frankly, when it comes to swim lessons, that would be a huge benefit. And again, I think our numbers would go up. We'd be able to do more with that type of facility because, quite frankly, we are a little bit limited. If you were to come back and say, yep, we can build that pool for swim team and we can make that water depth starting at 5 feet to accommodate swim team, that is not going to help boost our numbers in what we do as a community recreation department. Because we have young kids that come that already struggle going into 3.5 feet of water. Our instructors and our curriculum has to adjust for that. So if we had those little extra things, a little bit shallower pool, a little bit warmer pool, we would be able to make good use of an amenity like that. So when you're looking at dollars and how can we put it all into one package, there are definite advantages to being able to split up some of these uses into these different areas of one facility.
Maybe just changing things up a little bit today, I guess it'd be just interesting from the subject matter experts. So again, we're some type of competition pool. I'm guessing we're leaning towards 50 meters. So let's just say we're 50 meters. So I'm guessing we get a thumbs up from your group that we want to start there. Separate diving well, so if we did do 50 meter, could that diving be within the 50 meter? You'd be okay with that, so we wouldn't necessarily have to have a separate diving. But if we go down to 25, then we want something separate, right? Okay, thumbs up from everybody then, okay.
Can I just add one thing on that?
I'm sorry, yeah.
As a parent of a diver, going to meets at West, not having the diving well, one, they're not part of the team largely during practice season, and then their meets are on separate nights, whenever they have an invite, because it's just so disruptive to stop the meet, move a bunch of the stuff out of the way in the pool, to let the diving happen in the middle of the meet. It kills the flow of the meet, so, it's not ideal to have that in the middle, especially at a 25 meter pool. If it's bigger, you can do it on one end or something like that, I think that can work.
If we can do it, it'd be really nice to have a separate.
It seems like from the comments, the warm water, again, the warm water would be something that would be really advantageous, I think, from your guys' perspective in terms of programming,
Well, to add to that, I believe in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've tried to do open swims and stuff like that at the high schools, and just with the amenities and stuff that you have in the pool, you're not gonna attract people to come swim at your facility, so to have a warm water pool and maybe some interactive things there too, that would actually draw people to come to your facility for an open swim or something like that, because right now
We no longer offer any open swim or lap swim at either pool. And have not done that for some time now.
what about some type of splash pad, or schools aren't in the business of people having fun?
Well, again, I think that ties to what Cable just said, if the goal is truly to make it an overall community use pool, then you are looking at, for lack of a better comparison, something like a YMCA that has maybe not the same level of amenities, but something to draw people there for things other than a class or a team activity.
Yeah.
Would that go in the therapy pool area, right?
It could be set up separate,
Hypothetically,
sure.
yeah.
No, yeah, it could be set up separate, if that's truly the direction.
You'd have competition, slide, high school
I
slide.
got that at Appleton West.
All right, anything we're missing there, kind of as we start off and say, thumbs up, that's the kind of stuff
Sorry, I can't remember who mentioned the Neenah pool. What's the capacity of the Neenah pool?
About 230.
There's seating is not.
And it's
wooden
all
bleachers.
sectional, that's insane.
So 700 to 800 would actually be pretty massively big.
Even if you went double, if you went like 500, that.
But if you look at, if we're combining two teams of families too, as well as adding another team in there, so it would initially be a tri-team meet, now a dual team meet, but it's a tri-team numbers.
Well, and keep in mind, if we're at 50-meter pool, just that length in and of itself, it doesn't take many rows to get to that number pretty quickly, so.
But how many times do you get over, or would you think, I understand in that scenario.
Any invite will get hundreds of people.
It will fill. For any large event, for sure.
When Neenah runs their sectional meet, from what I've seen in the past years, you've got the people out the door, the spectators. You have people sitting on the floor in front of the bleachers because you run its course. It's too small, really, to me, for in a sectional right now. They need much more space. I mean, like I said, they've got people, sometimes 2 lines of people sitting on the floor, plus blocking the whole entrance exit.
Neenah runs a yellow rope along the side of their pool during big meets to make sure people don't cross it.
So you really want 500 plus.
And sectional meet are hosting 14 plus teams, conferences smaller than that, probably like 7, but even our invite, I think we had 10 teams at our last invite. And this year we chose not to have spectators, one, because of COVID and everything, but two, because we just can't fit them in there with plus 10 teams, so.
And that causes a safety hazard, plus you have to take into account if you're wanting to do large, you know, out of the area swim meets or anything like that for revenue generating, or even the ones, you know, hosted by the high school teams, you're talking all those swimmers are in there as well. So that seating capacity is not taking into account your swimmers. So there needs to be a place or a space either within the deck or just outside of the deck, you know, just a room where they can sit and wait for their time to be able to come in and actually swim.
Yeah, and I could say a couple examples where we're calling out the seating, you know, Ashwaubenon, for example, I think it was 450 or something like that. That's all just mezzanine seating up above, and then there was, I think, room for 200 swimmers on the deck at their particular case. So yeah, we definitely have to take that into consideration. So we did go through a little bit of an option solution, but I don't want to spend too much time because this is very wrong at this point, kind of the way our discussion has gone today. So in that we showed a little bit, I'll say, simpler type solution for what the pool is. So let's just disregard this and maybe talk about some of the other amenities. We obviously heard storage a lot. So again, accounting for storage. We've heard or talked about the number of locker rooms and then some community bathrooms, which again, we can easily sprinkle within here as well. So I think just as we're having our conversations tonight, is 4 locker rooms, kind of 2 community, a women's and men's community, and then 2, I'll say, school or student locker rooms. Does that seem sufficient? A lot of times within these spaces, there's some meeting type rooms built in, whether those are coaches' facilities, whether those are for birthday parties on weekends when you can rent the facility out. So that's an important piece. And then again, I think the other consideration we have to give to this is that this has some hospitality type piece to it. So again, swimming is swim meets are interesting in that my kid might swim at 9 o'clock in the morning and then not again till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of time spent, a lot of times not even sitting in the pool area. They might want something outside. So, having concessions, having places for, gathering places for people to sit and wait as well is just as important as the spectator seating. So I'm going to kind of pause here. I'm going to let you guys break into your groups. Again, let's maybe focus more specifically on some of those goals of what you heard. Again, 50 meters with the bulkhead, which would have the diving, warm water pool, the kind of the splash pad amenity. Again, what thoughts or questions you have on that? I think thoughts and questions on the competition, and then thoughts and questions on some of the above and beyond things, like I said, concessions, seating outside of that area as well. So we'll take a little time here in our groups.
And then something that we wanted to we had a discussion about is that we really think that the splash pad, whatever it is, our low socioeconomic families, we see this as the facility that they would use through the rec department for their lessons, for their things. So whatever we can do to attract that, because I know the Y offers scholarships, but the paperwork and how to do it and for those families is just overwhelming, and it doesn't happen as much as what we think it might happen. So whatever we can do to keep that in mind at the forefront, that if we're going to do this, let's do it right so that we level the playing field, that everybody can get swimming lessons, as a lifelong goal in what they could use in their future.
Script.
I guess the big question, where to locate this, and if it's not attached to one of the schools, or even if it is and it's just one facility, I think we've talked about this with others, but transportation needs to be provided to have some equity, or students that want to participate have the ability to get to the facility and get the practice. And then I guess I struggle a little bit about whether or not we should have a splash pad or some things that are in other facilities, and are there ways to maybe put something else in here that isn't somewhere else in the community? Now, whatever that is, but, given, we got splash pads, outdoor, indoor, else in the community, is there something else we can offer that's not a duplicate, but additive? So whatever that is, I'm not sure what that should be, but maybe something different.
Lazy River?
Maybe. There's a really small one at the mall.
Yeah, downtown West.
Something.
It's a very small.
I was trying to think of a way to integrate the kayaking, because maybe we can get
Whitewater stuff, okay.
River, yeah.
Throw away a pool additive.
Yes.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, well, that's,
Oh, no, right.
sorry, I should have spoken.
Tiki bar.
The not so lazy river.
Look what Clint did here.
I know.
Well, we were talking about trying to understand, we're trying to set up a framework to consider what would be a baseline upgrade facility that met the needs of the school. And then a nice to have that would address things like being able to host meets and maybe include the 50-meter lanes, or the separate diving well. So like the baseline would be more like 6 lanes, 25 meters. And then the even better level would be being able to do the big meets to attract people who to host their events at the facility. Because if we try to do too much, it's going to cost an arm and a leg, and then it may not pass, and then we don't get anything. So that's the thinking that we were going through. And then we really would like to see, before we consider the even better level, what the economic development impact would be. We also know that aquatics and warm, splash pads and things like that will affect the sellability if it goes to referendum, because it'll get a much broader appeal to the community. And then a sort of a more detailed question is, we're wondering, what do the separate community versus student locker rooms look like? What's the composition that we've seen at other facilities that we would have to mimic?
Someone mentioned Fond du Lac seems to work, again, maybe not exactly like that, but the general concept is that, from what you've heard, does that idea work? Or don't you guys, maybe we'd have to do a little more investigation?
It's a separate area, so it's like on this side and then by the warm water area, and then the athletes are more on this side by the competition area. So like if you're a parent or a child like walking in, you kind of go to one area, and then athletes for meets would go to the other. So
Especially if you're all in there at the same time, that's where it really is a benefit, because, for example, we purposely time out our adult exercise classes a good 15 minutes past when we think North swim team is gonna be done, just so that we're not intermixing, because the older ladies, they want their space, they don't wanna be, it's different people, it's just trying to cater, to that. And the high school kids, we don't want them in the locker rooms, and then our little ones are in the locker rooms trying to do things, and with what we have right now, it would just be nice where if they wanna have lockers for their swim team members, they can lock their stuff. We can have lockers in another locker room that are always open for people to use, so it's just, being more accommodating that way. It doesn't mean that somewhere down the line, if they're hosting a big meet, they're gonna use all the locker rooms they have, so they will get used in other ways, but, for the initial part, it's nice to have that separate, as well as either family room, changing areas, or I forget what pool it was you mentioned had some individual.
That was at Schwabenon.
Okay, individual stalls or individual locker rooms, to be able to accommodate, those folks that need more privacy, so.
So this is Fond du Lac, so they have 2 locker rooms here that kind of, again, kind of support their warm water, learn to swim, more community, I think, oriented pool. And then they have the 2 locker rooms here that support the competition pool. At Schwabenon, again, oops, this is Lloyd. At Schwabenon did you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 locker rooms here that all kind of spill out onto the competition pool, but you can get to the warm water pool. And then they did their individual changing shower areas off that warm water pool. So again, that specific detail, we'd obviously work with you guys to figure out what the best scenario would be for you guys. Additional comments from our subject matter experts?
Us, okay. Just some random comments, not a whole lot of detail, but we mentioned before some sort of indoor staging area, whether that just be an empty room or an empty space for overflow. We also talked about an outdoor patio, and again, not that we're looking for something fancy, just something where you have that overflow of space, so in the nicer months, if we're renting the facility for larger meets, there's another place for people to gravitate to. If we're looking at a facility not attached to one of the high schools, it would need to have a weight room or again a space for dry land training and exercises, because now they won't have that access. Maybe not initially, but wired in for some sort of underwater camera capacity for training, because that is becoming, or has been something that is beneficial for the swimmers. Also the opportunity to live stream. So again, from the technology standpoint, having that wired in and also maybe piped into our overflow areas so that people know what's going on. Again, thinking of meets. Scoreboards, electronics, they would like that in an upper level area similar to what West has right now. Also with an upper level storage capacity, whether that be temperature controlled or something to keep all of those electronics and those things from rotting away, more or less. A first floor would need to have a pool or staff office that they can see out into the pool area at all times. That also going along with emergency door access and where are those points located. Where is this facility going to be? Again, if it's off-site from a high school, transportation to and from practices, so that will be a cost to the district to get them back and forth. We mentioned the changing rooms already, and then again, back to the high schools, how does this accommodate the Phi-Ed classes if it's off-site?
Well, if you didn't have those last two, you would have won your third Segway Award.
Shoot, I tried.
So any other comments here before I think we touched on one way or another, and I touched on all of these. Again, we don't have a ton of time left. We'll kind of skip ahead. Just really quickly, again, we kind of are starting to go through some of the analysis. If we're assuming a seating capacity of right around 800 people, and then the pool area capacity with spectators of roughly 100, maybe as much as 200. If we have a warm water splash pad, so we're looking at a facility with a pretty high occupant count, almost pushing 1,000. Again, if we're looking at our Oshkosh code, that means we need a lot of parking spots. And if we start to just roughly lay this out, we need a pretty good sized chunk of land. Again, this doesn't take into consideration possible shared uses and those types of things, but we just want to start to have that, that dialogue of what we think we need. So, again, that question of where this goes is a very good one. So I guess, when we had talked previously a little bit about the multi-use facility, the indoor turf, the basketball, we sort of teased maybe this would be part of it. So with our last remaining comments here, and I know those our subject matter experts, weren't part of those conversations, but we looked at another facility, possibly being a combined use facility. I guess some thoughts about that being all together and on a yet to be determined site. Again, we're not playing realtor, but I guess subject matter experts in terms of it being an off-site location. You mentioned already the transportation. What other considerations would you maybe give for food for thought for next time for the group to consider as far as location?
If we can take transportation a step beyond the students and swim team, Oshkosh, and I don't use the busing system, I'm gonna pick on the buses for just a quick second. The busing schedule in the city of Oshkosh is less than adequate, in my opinion, when it comes to nights and weekends, and of course, we are in the day of Ubers and Lyfts and those sorts of things, but going back to her comment about a lot of the clientele that we serve is our middle to lower income. And they may or may not have a way to get far outside of town to be able to utilize that facility. And for those that were around when the current Pollock Community Water Park was built, that was something that kept coming up in conversation, and that is why it landed in the same exact location that the former pool was at, was because of it being centrally located, close to the highway, and easily accessible. I know that that's a tough task when we're talking about a facility or possibly a combined facility with more indoor amenities. But somehow, some way, that piece is huge and really needs to be looked at when you're looking at serving your citizens in Oshkosh.
Any other thoughts from the group? Any preliminary site thoughts from this group? Again, obviously we don't have time to play realtor tonight, but.
Yeah.
Isn't it true, though, that if we had it centrally located or very close to a school, it would just get more use, right? Wouldn't that be true?
I think it depends on all what's included. You know, if we are combining an indoor, athletic facility of some sort into this where you become more of a, public YMCA, possibly. But again, transportation is, still something that needs to be considered no matter where, you land.
If you think about a central place in between two west and north campuses, you're looking at about where the university is, maybe a little bit west, but not much space there.
In the middle of the river.
I can't think of anything.
Do we know the difference between, we were talking about if you have a standalone facility not at one of the schools, you'll need, there'll be things that need to be added there that were, that wouldn't need to be if you had it adjacent to the school. Meeting space, locker rooms, I don't know. Do we know what the difference is between those two?
I don't, in this particular case, I don't know that there's a whole lot will benefit from being attached to another building, because even if we will have to design, these locker rooms are different and unique from, what we would just, if we were to tack on, and even if we had the fortunate situation, there were locker rooms there, right on the exterior. Pool locker rooms have different requirements and configurations and stuff that we'd have to adhere to, so I don't know that the main thing we'd be able to share would be parking. I think that would be the main amenity that we'd be able to share, between an existing facility.
But a new facility, we would close the existing pools, I'm assuming. And Craig, is it becoming a money pit? I mean, the future maintenance of both pools for the next 30 years is not, I'm assuming is.
If they make it that way.
And that's why I mentioned FIAD classes, because you would
Yeah,
essentially
totally.
cut that out of your curriculum
Yeah.
for the high school students. That would not exist.
You touch the north pool now, and you have to come, all the new codes come into play, so you're better off blowing it up.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, if you put it somewhere, if you put it in Rainbow Park
Now
or
you're
something,
talking.
right, you wouldn't keep the north and west pool going, right?
Not if we had something like this, there wouldn't be any.
Right, well, no, if we're going 50 meters, warm water, 8 lanes.
And even if you were to chop off the land space of North Pool right now or West Pool right now, you're landlocked. There's nowhere to go
Yeah.
bigger.
I'm just gonna, Jim, you don't mind if I ask you if you guys have done any studies on the longevity of the current pools or mechanics or anything like that? Are they in good shape, fair shape, poor shape? Pipes, all that stuff.
North is in better shape. We replaced a lot of the piping, pumps, technology. We regrouted here, did a lot of tile repair, but it's not deep.
Right.
And actually, the repair work we did was because we had some superficial failure. So we kind of did it with Fayette and Europeans. It's useful.
Sure.
We have not put much district money back into West's pool other than
All right, well, I think we probably should pause, otherwise we do slip into, we'll be here till 8 if we continue down our site path, so we'll put a bookmark in and I'll let Dr. Davis wrap us up here.
All right, well, thank you again so much. Thanks to our subject matter experts for coming out and helping provide that critical insight. So it's always great to be able to just, refine all these plans. So what we'll do is go back based on this feedback, come back on the 18th, come back here and then start mapping things out a little bit, look at some options based on what we had talked about tonight. So if you have any thoughts or questions or anything that comes up between now and the 18th, just shoot them to myself or Dave. We can make sure that we get them to the team and include that in our next round of feedback. So, all right, so with that, thanks. Have a great night.